Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Keys, and today I am joined by Monty. How you doing, mate?
Not too bad, thank you, mate. I'm just looking forward to the big matchup coming up on the weekend. Reeling off quite a hard-fought win in the end, but I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Same as you. Really looking forward to the game at the weekend. And today, one of the things I wanted to have a chat about was Emile Smith Rowe and Kai Havertz, because it's a topic that has never kind of gone away, and one that Smith Rowe's start has kind of just triggered more people again. And one of the things that I wanted to start looking at was Agbonlahor basically saying, which I don't want to give Gabriel Agbonlahor too much credit. There isn't a lot goes on between those ears, but it was an interesting quote, and it was Mikel Arteta will regret spending his transfer budget in Kai Havertz. They've got Vieira, they've got Smith Rowe, who are better than Havertz in the same position. For me, Arteta has cost the Arsenal the Premier League by spending the money very stupidly. Now, that's a pretty stupid quote, let's be honest, given that Fabio Vieira has a fairly patchy injury record and is yet to really show what he can do at Arsenal. But that's not who we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about another player with a fairly patchy injury record, who we all love and all really, really want to do well at Arsenal, and that is Emile Smith Rowe. So firstly, give me your thoughts on Smith Rowe's performance against Forest, which we have discussed in more detail on the main pod. But just a snapshot of what you think, what you're impressed with, what you think he needs to work on, so on.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great before. I'll say he had a good performance. He didn't really excel in anything, but he did nothing wrong. And I don't know whether that's just a case of he's not played for a long time, really. So maybe he didn't want to sort of take any risks and just wanted to follow the game plan. But as we broke down on the pod, like he didn't really want to take too many touches. He was quick with his passing. It was pretty much one touch, one pass. Kept the ball moving. Whereas if Havertz was in the position, he would normally take one, two, maybe even three touches, look up, have a look round. And Smith Rowe was clearly wanting to get the ball moving and wanted to just keep the transition flowing. But no, it was good. It was good. He didn't do anything wrong. I just wish he was a bit more direct, which is what we know that he can do and what he's really good at.
Absolutely. And I think that was something that the stats very much backed up. He had 48 touches of the ball, attempted 45 passes, which showed he just didn't dwell on the ball, which is one of the things we all love about Smith Rowe. He has the ability to run and turn and carry, but he also has that ability to pop it off first time and just twist his body, turn into space, and really drop the knees and go. So that's something that we will want to see more of, and that's what we all get so excited about watching him for. But with this show, I wanted to do a bit of an analysis, look at the strengths and the weaknesses of both Kai Havertz and Emile Smith Rowe and what each player offers Arsenal right now, because they're such different profiles that I think it makes for a very interesting conversation. So one of the interesting things about Kai Havertz is there's been so many people have praised him repeatedly who are very, very kind of well-respected thought leaders and tacticians within the game. And obviously Thomas Tuchel, someone that's been full of praise for Havertz over the years. He coached him at Chelsea. He did try to bring him to Bayern Munich in the summer. He turned them down, came to Arsenal. Real Madrid tried to sign him as well. So which came as a surprise to me because Havertz was per at Chelsea a lot of the time. Arteta has repeatedly praised his intelligence and has said that Kai's a player that goes to war for you, which again is a very interesting quote for a player that's often accused of being quite languid around the pitch. Naglesmann said that Kai Havertz is so intelligent he can play at left back, which he actually did, and he scored when he played at left back for Germany. And so that's something that I think that's one of the big trademarks of Kai's game is intelligence. But at the same time, a great quote on Emile Smith Rowe, and this is one of my favorite quotes that I keep coming back to, is Jimmy Carragher when he said that Smith Rowe is the best player in the league at dribbling with the ball at pace. And this comes back to what you've just said about not wanting to take people on, not wanting to take risks. But what do you think we'll see with Smith Rowe on that front this year? Because he has been out a long time. And do you think the injury will have any effect on this side of his game? Because that was a hallmark of his great performances in 21-22.
Yeah, I think it'll have an initial impact. You never really want to push too hard off the bat. I mean, I don't think it will change his style of play going forward. I just think it's like an initial thing. I just think he needs a bit of confidence behind him, a little bit of a run of games. I think you'll start seeing the best of him. We discussed on a pod. I think against the Liverpool game, you definitely I would probably start Havertz just because he's had more run of games, more confident, more in the system this year, and then for the next game go back to Emile Smith Rowe, because I think Emile Smith Rowe will end up having a better season. It's just a case of, do you want to put him straight into the deep end against an in-form Liverpool, or do you want to have Havertz, who's been able to do the job this year? But I don't think going forward it's going to massively hinder Emile Smith Rowe, the injury. I just think it's a case of there's a bit of rustiness. But he didn't do anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? It was still the rustiness, but he still didn't do anything wrong. I just think he just didn't want to keep the ball too much. Maybe do a take on and lose the ball, because I think he did one dribble attempt and then it actually got dispossessed from it. So he probably went, all right, today's not my day. Let's just keep the ball moving. So going forward, I think we'll definitely start seeing that more.
Yeah, that's what I hope as well. I think that yes, there's been injuries, but there's been a lot of recovery time where he's actually been out, where the club has been very cautious with him and so on. And I guess trying to build up his body, because he's had a massive growth spurt. If you look at him when he was young, the kind of powerful strides he had as a kind of 5'8", 5'9" player, he's nearly 6 foot now. So this is what people forget as well when they talk about throwing 16-year-olds into the mix. Men don't fully finish growing until they're 25. So we see the difference in someone like Saka 5 years ago compared to now. This is what we need to be careful of with Waneri, Lewis Skelly, and so on. Those kids are still growing, and you have a growth spurt, and it can lead to a lot of muscular problems. And that's nothing to do with playing football. That's literally your body growing and changing. But one of the interesting quotes that we've seen from Tuchel that's been repeatedly used is comparing Kai Havertz to Dennis Bergkamp, Robin van Persie, Dimitar Berbatov. Berbatov himself has said that Kai is the player that reminds him most of himself. But Tuchel said that Kai can play in the half position because he has good runs, he feels free from the 9, and he creates an overload to one side. The comparisons to these three has always interested me, because I think one of Kai's biggest weaknesses is ball striking. He both off the pass and literally striking a ball to shoot. And when you look at Van Persie, I remember Robin van Persie's whole Arsenal career. I remember him walking on the pitch in his stupid white trousers the first time that we saw him being introduced to the crowd. And the first thing that we noticed about Van Persie was he could strike a ball better than anyone. His passing was crisp. Bergkamp had that. Berbatov had the kind of languid style, but again, he was a very clean technician. I've never saw Havertz as being a really clean technician. I think he's got a good first touch, but he's got a slow pass. He's good. Technically, he's a player that's got potential, but he isn't the strongest technician on the planet. And so that's something I think people cling to this quote a bit too much. And I think there's potential to be like these players, but I don't think he's particularly like any one of them. But just on to Smith Rowe again. So the great account on Twitter, if people aren't following it, they really should. This guy really knows his stuff. Nonewthing. But a great sort of insight into Smith Rowe. It's third man runs, deep runs, give and goes, ball strike, and two-footedness. These are the qualities of classic throwback killers, and Emile Smith Rowe's got them all. And basically said his reintroduction will change things for Arsenal. So just give me your thoughts on that, because I think that's a pretty good description of what Emile Smith Rowe gives on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Smith Rowe is more of a transition player. He can kickstart things for you. He wants to be direct. It's just I think it's in his sort of DNA per se. He's just a very direct player and wants to go north-south. I feel like Kai Havertz is more of the target man approach, and there's stats that back that up as well. Like Kai Havertz's progressive pass received is like the 98th percentile. Whereas Emile Smith Rowe, he's more of the guy that would go drop back a little bit and create the progressive passes to that sort of front line. Emile Smith Rowe's game is I can't really think of a player who reminds you of. To be fair, he's he's got quite a unique set of skills, like in the sense that he can go off a turn, he can do 1-2s, he can even shoot, and he's actually quite tall. Like when you think of Emile Smith Rowe, for some reason people think he's quite short. I'm pretty sure he's like 6'2", and he's actually like one of the tallest players on the team. So it's quite a baffling, because I remember against the Nottingham game there was I think it was Ali McCoist or whoever was doing the commentary. They were saying, "Oh, we need to get Havertz, maybe get Havertz on, get the more vertical threat." And it's like he's only an inch and a half taller.
So Smith Rowe's 6 foot exactly. Kai's 6'4".
6'4", okay.
So there is a bit of a difference there. But I think what's interesting on that point is the perception of height, because Smith Rowe is only about an inch shorter than someone like Ivan Toney. But I think it's the difference in kind of center of gravity, the way they play. Smith Rowe has that kind of knees drop, shoulders drop. He gets himself close to the floor, really protects the ball. He can turn. He's got the agility of a 5'6", 5'7".
He looks like he's the height of a Santi Cazorla, but he's not.
Exactly. So yeah, and I think there's players. For me, Smith Rowe's got a bit of Jack Grealish in him. He's got a bit of. If you look at young Alex Scott, he's always had that kind of toddy feel with the low socks. But I think what's interesting is he's more of a midfielder. And he's right. I think the north-south description is a really good one. He's a player, he wants to go vertical every time. He wants to, when he gets the ball, he wants to make those runs from wide to centre. And he's a player that kind of wants to find the quickest route to goal. And quite often he does that through dribbling. But by contrast, I think Kai is more of an orchestrator. He's someone that's happy to work his way to goal in whatever way the solution presents itself. So, but yeah, I think perception is a big thing with kind of players' heights and how they're perceived. And as you say, getting the height on, I think that is something. It's great, and Kai's great as the target man, but he's not an aggressive header of the ball. He's someone that goes, he kind of slowly walks up to the ball and just hangs in the air. It's a really unique target man approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with these two. I mean, Havertz, and even just the stats tell it, like he's more of a target man. The way he receives the passes, like his actually shooting stats are one of the highest in the midfield position across the top 5 leagues. I think he's got 0.23 expected goals throughout all comps. Puts him in the 93 percentile. His shot total per game is 2.23. That's against 97 percentile. His shots on target though is a poor. It's like 26.9%. And what's an interesting one is his average shot distance is 13.6. So he's normally trying to shoot just on sort of the edge of the box, which is normally where we see him. And that's also in his top 90, the 98th percentile. But then when we go to his passing stats is nowhere near what Emile Smith Rowe be. I mean, Emile Smith Rowe hasn't had enough data yet to be able to pull these stats, but we can tell just from the one game at Forest, the fact that he had 45 passes, 45 touches. You look at Kai Havertz's passing, his passes completed is only 27.98 per game. His passes attempted is 33.69, which is the 9th percentile. So he's not a passer. He's more of a receiver because, I mean, he's receiving the progressive pass. He's the guy who allows you to go up to the next level. He receives that ball because he can target it down. Another good stuff from his aerial one is high. It's 2.49, but his aerial percentage is only 49.2. But because he's so tall, I think a lot of people are trying to target him in the air, which is good to have. But then he just needs to sort of, like you said, I think he needs to critique it a little bit, maybe be a bit more physical sometimes. And his carrying is something that we don't really see. I mean, his carries is 26.98, which is only 21 percentile. He's barely carrying it. He's only carried it per night. He's doing 124 meters per game, which is very poor for an attacking 8. I mean, Declan Rice's carries is something like 230 meters a game, and he's working at 6, which is in a more defensive role. So it gives you an idea of what he's doing. But one thing about Havertz is when you look at his touches in the attacking third and the attacking penalty area, he's in the top 99 percentile, doing 4.98 touches. But you're not getting that with an Emile Smith Rowe. Emile Smith Rowe is a 1-2 guy. He will take a shot. He will do the passes, whereas Havertz is the guy who will take the ball. He will give you that aerial presence, or he'll give you the body to be able to put it into the penalty area, and then you can play off him.
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things as well is I've pulled his Premier League stats in isolation this season, and the likes of passes per match are actually much lower than what you've just quoted when you just isolate the Premier League. And when you compare that with Granit Xhaka last season, so the passes per game, Kai is hitting 22.71 in the league. Last year, Granit Xhaka was on 36.7, which shows what Mikel's asking of Kai. It's like, yes, he's not a passer, but the role Kai's playing is very different. And if we look quite often, he is that Swiss Army knife in attack. Jesus is dropping into a hole while Havertz goes beyond. You see the minute in the likes of the Forest game when Havertz comes on, he goes beyond in a position Smith Rowe's not being asked to do. But similarly, Smith Rowe was overlapping on Martinelli and allowing Martinelli to come into that half space, which again, Kai wasn't being asked to do that. And it's quite clear a lot of things that we see from Arsenal is instructional. Even the other day, Zinchenko started putting his foot in the ball. But about a minute before that, Arteta had called him over and said something to him. Suddenly, the foot went on the ball. And you could see Arteta praising it. As fans, we want to see something different. But so much of what we see at Arsenal is instructional. But I do think the carries is a big one that Kai can improve on. And that's something that I think that's a very obvious area where Smith Rowe can really add something that we're not doing right now and really not thriving in. But interestingly, just on the kind of the topic of where positional play, if you look at Kai's heat map, it is actually very heavily focused on the left-hand side, on the touchline, which surprised me. He's a player that whenever we have a goal kick, you see him quite often start there, and he comes inside, and Raya puts that ball kind of into the left half space. We see Kai come slowly in and attacking it. And but again, what's interesting about this is he covers almost every blade of grass across the pitch, and the biggest strength I think Kai's brought to Arsenal is his off-the-ball qualities, which, funny enough, was the thing that because I guess I didn't know enough about Havertz watching him every week, they were the things I was most concerned about and thought, you wouldn't trust him in a big game. Has he got the work rate and everything? And actually, the work rate is probably the lowest thing that we'd be worried about with Kai. And this heat map just shows how much ground he covers, kind of how willing he is to go into every area of the pitch and really show what he can do. And I brought up Smith Rowe's heat map for comparison. This is really difficult because Smith Rowe has played a handful of games this season. He started 2, and the truth is, he, as you said, the data isn't there to really compare what Smith Rowe can do. And this heat map, again, it shows Smith Rowe isn't a player that covers the same amount of ground, but again, we're working off much smaller sample sizes. But his most kind of heavily congested period of the pitch to play in is the left half space. And interestingly, I think that's something with Havertz and with the kind of different areas Arteta asked him to pick up, we do lose the player in that position. So if we can hold Smith Rowe in that area and get him there, where do you see the improvement coming, especially against low blocks? Because as you said earlier, Smith Rowe thrives more on transition, but he has got the close footwork and the give and go ability and just the fearlessness to take people on in tight spaces, which we don't have right now. So how do you see that being effective against the low block?
Yeah, the thing with low blocks is the only way you can beat them. And I feel like we were definitely what's the word I'm looking for? We were definitely victim to it in the first half. We weren't moving it quick enough. We were just too lethargic. We just weren't direct enough. And then once they actually started giving us space, we were able to do the approach that we were doing. With Smith Rowe, because he wants to get the ball out of his feet. He either wants to charge at you or get the ball out of his feet. He doesn't want to mess about. He's just a lot more direct in terms of the part that you need. That you need to beat low blocks. You need to have quick 1-2s. You need to have transition passes. You need to be able to rotate and switch. You need to just on the one, like when we talked on a pod, like for instance when Zinchenko came in and just quickly burst it low and fizzed it low. That was probably the best pass in the first half.
Absolutely.
You just need to be direct and they need to be quick. Whereas Havertz, every time he touches the ball, I never really see him do sort of one touch passing. That he doesn't get the ball and then just pass it straight away. He always wants to take a touch. He always wants to look up. He always wants to maybe take a touch or two and then maybe assess his options. You can't do that against a low block because once you do that against a low block, they reset, they position themselves, they shift over. And you can't do that. The only way to beat low blocks, and you look at the likes of Man City and Liverpool, who've been going up against low blocks all season, but they've not been struggling to score.
Move it
they
quick.
Just move it quick. You have to. When you've got like the likes of, I don't know, Liverpool, Diogo Jota and Darwin Núñez, or even like Trent sometimes when he moves forward. And you look at Conor Bradley the other day, they just move it quick. It's always just very quick and you shift it along. When you've got Salah coming back as well, like they just shift it. And then you go to Man City, they've got De Bruyne, you can make a line splitting pass. You've got Foden who wants to go direct. You've got Alvarez who's very tricky. And so I mean,
and a good ball striker.
Exactly, and they just move it quickly, which is what you need against low blocks. Whereas like Havertz, I would feel more comfortable with Havertz playing a game, let's say in the Champions League against a more evenly matched team or a team that's a little bit better because of his target man abilities. Because he allows us to progress into the final third. Whereas against low blocks, I think Emile Smith Rowe is just better suited for those because he can move it quickly. What I noticed against the Forest, and I watched it back, every time he was receiving the ball, he had his eyes already looking. He was checking where the ball's going to go.
He's a scanner.
It. Yeah, 100%. You watch his eyes constantly, just like that. He's always scanning.
He is always looking. So I also, because we're going back to look at a lot of Smith Rowe's previous work, I thought it was only fair to do the same with Havertz. And similarly, he's a player that had a huge growth spurt. He wasn't a giraffe whenever he broke through at Leverkusen. He is now. So he was much, much shorter. His body shape was very different. He didn't have the same kind of gangly long legs that he had. He was playing much closer to the ground. But his 3 seasons at Leverkusen, again, if you look at where he played, he's even played as a DM, left mid, right wing. He's played, but predominantly as a centre attacking midfielder, and he played also up front. But again, as a traditional midfielder, this shows his quality to play all over the park and kind of feeds into why his heat map is that way too. And again, at Chelsea, he played the majority of his games at centre forward. So what's interesting is Kai is being asked to play a completely different position, learn a new role, and also do something in the same way Smith Rowe is being asked to learn a very specific role in the team. So this is something that I think we'll see Kai improve on. But interestingly, last season, and this is something we discussed in the summer when we were looking at Kai, but everything that he does, he's ranking very highly for runs into the box, targeted runs, and distance covered, which again feeds into why Arteta bought him, which is to add more goals in the final third. And I think what he gives you compared to Smith Rowe is a completely different option. And I think rather than almost comparing them like we're doing now and comparing their strengths and weaknesses, we need to look at 2 different options, which is what Pep does and thinks, I've got this tool for this solution, I've got this tool for this problem, and this is how we're going to work them. So, but again, if you look at Smith Rowe's touch map against Forest, he's all over the pitch, which is something that we maybe haven't seen in the past from him, his willingness to go. And again, as we've already touched on, a lot of his passes went first time. And if you can see how many he's getting close to the box, and again, he's given those balls first time, which, as you said, it's moving it quickly that breaks down a low block. But one of the things I looked at, and again, it's hard to compare because of the lack of data around Smith Rowe, but his attacking numbers per 90 are really good. But this is 2 years ago. And again, it's unfair to completely compare because we're not comparing Kai in his best season at Leverkusen. But Smith Rowe, if you look at his passes attempted, they're higher than Havertz, but they're only marginally higher. Like passes attempted 36 compared to 34.1 with Havertz. Successful layoffs 1.3 to 1.1. Through balls attempted is higher. That is a weakness of Kai's. He doesn't play those through balls, but even the goals are just marginally better for Smith Rowe per 90 than they are for Havertz. And then when you go into the defensive numbers, this is something where Kai really shines. And we saw even the other day, it is a weakness of Smith Rowe. The lack of 5.8 aerial duels contested per game for Havertz. And even when he's not winning them, he's drawing defenders to him. He's causing problems, and it gives us space. It makes defenders think. And you don't always have to win your aerial duels. You have to win the second ball. And that's something Arsenal have got a lot better at, because in years gone by, Giroud would have gone up and won a header or contested it. Ozil wasn't competing for that second ball. Odegaard is, Jesus is, Saka is, Martinelli is. That's what we've got now. And if Kai is playing that role, it gives us something different. But similarly, with Smith Rowe, so it's that the strengths of Havertz are different. And I think these stats show that. When you look at the ground duels contested, they're actually not that different. So 6.3 to 7.9, yes, it's higher. But it shows that Smith Rowe is happy to go in for duels. And again, Smith Rowe wins 3.2, Kai wins 3.8. That shows to me that Smith Rowe is more than capable of going in for the duels and winning them. He just needs to, I guess, be more positionally aware and really go for things. But we're going to have to wrap up the show there. But just your final thoughts on this, Monty. So in a big game like Liverpool, who are you going with in the left 8 position, looking at what we've seen?
I'm purely going to go with Kai Havertz, just purely because he's had more game time. If for instance, Emile Smith Rowe had a run of 6 games and got back to the form that we know he can get to, I'd happily put Emile Smith Rowe in it, because we need that directness against Liverpool. We can't be lethargic. But I just think purely on who's more comfortable, who's more confident right now, and the way that they're playing, because I mean, Emile Smith Rowe wasn't really doing his signature runs into the box. I've got to go with Kai, just because he's had more minutes purely. But I think by the time we get to the City game, hopefully we can get Emile Smith Rowe on the ball a bit more, and then I think Emile Smith Rowe would be a good suit.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And well, hopefully we get 3 points on Sunday. Massive game. But if you like the video, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and join us again on Tuesday for the 15-minute show. And don't forget to tune in for the main pod and our 200th episode, which we hope to be celebrating with 3 points after the Liverpool game. Have a great day. Thank you.